Welcome back to Palanghi 21. Today I will show you a 1986 Italian drama film written and directed by Gianni De Campo, titled The Flavor of Corn. The film stars Lorenzo Lina and Marco Mestriner, and follows the story of a relationship between a professor and his student. Lorenzo is a young man who has just met the requirements to become a teacher. He is placed in a small village in Italy. In class, he teaches about a novel called Cronaca Familiare, which tells the story of two brothers who are brought up apart from each other at their mother's death, then brought together by difficult family circumstances. The school bell rings before Lorenzo can finish the novel. One of his students, a 12-year-old boy named Duilio, chases after him and asks if they will be able to finish the novel, because just like the story in the novel, his mother died while giving birth to him. Later on, Lorenzo is summoned by the principal. He says Cronaca Familiare should not be taught to students, because the novel is intended for adult. He also says several things that Lorenzo must be considered while teaching at the school. One of which is to respect the decisions made by parents and never interfere. Lorenzo knows most of his students are told to help their parents instead of going to school. Therefore Lorenzo takes the initiative to meet each of his students, and provides free tutoring for them. He starts with a boy, who rarely went to school because he was forced to help out at his parents' bar. After that, he visits Duilio's house. He meets Duilio's father, stepmother, grandfather and grandmother. He spends time until the evening. Duilio accompanies Lorenzo back into town. He asks when he will see him again. Lorenzo says he can see Duilio tomorrow if he wants to, and Duilio replies he wants to see him every day. The next day, Lorenzo returns to visit Duilio. Duilio gives him a boat sculpture he had made himself. He says his grandfather really liked him, and tells him about his mother and his older brother who had died, then takes him to visit their graves. On the way home, Lorenzo meets a woman named Cecilia, and they start a relationship. But their relationship becomes more complicated, because Cecilia already has a boyfriend named Bruno. Cecilia and Bruno agreed to have an open relationship. In his spare time, Lorenzo often visits Duilio, and Duilio invites him to dinner, but Lorenzo refuses. Duilio looks disappointed. His grandmother warns him not to act like that, but the annoyed Duilio is being disrespectful to her. Lorenzo meets Duilio outside, and he agrees to have dinner with his family. After dinner, Lorenzo warns Duilio to be more polite to his grandmother. Then Duilio's father tells him about his past, regarding his family. How he met his current wife, his daughter Adalgisa, who was not happy with his father who remarried so she left home, and Duilio's grandfather who had cancer. The next day, while Lorenzo is teaching, he accidentally drops his stuff. Duilio immediately helps him, and sees a photo of a woman in his wallet. Later, Lorenzo delivers some books as a present for Duilio. The next day, Duilio comes to see Lorenzo. He is happy with the gift from him. Then he gives Lorenzo a birthday gift, which is a poem he wrote. Lorenzo spends a lot of time with Duilio. Duilio takes him to the fields where he teaches him about trees and driving a tractor. Then they talk about their lives. Duilio asks about Lorenzo's family. Lorenzo tells him he lived alone after his mother died and his father remarried. Duilio hopes Lorenzo to be his older brother. After that, they return to the Duilio's house. Duilio's parents express concern about the gift from Lorenzo. They think the gift is too expensive for him, but Lorenzo doesn't mind it. Later, Duilio takes Lorenzo to go to the barn, because he has something he wants to talk about privately. He tells Lorenzo about a classmate who liked him. Then he changes the conversation, and asks about the photo of the woman in his wallet. Lorenzo doesn't want to answer him, but Duilio keeps asking about it, and that makes Lorenzo angry. They decide to go back, but Duilio grabs Lorenzo's hand. When Lorenzo turns around to look at him, Duilio kisses him on the lips gently. They come out of the barn, and Duilio's stepmother is waiting for them. She says the taxi she ordered has arrived. The next day before class starts, Duilio's father goes to see Lorenzo. He wants Lorenzo not to visit Duilio again, with the excuse that their farm need assistance. Lorenzo tells him to tell the truth. He knows that Duilio's stepmother had said something bad to him. Duilio's father admits his wife thought Lorenzo was doing something immoral with his son, but he didn't believe that. He just feels that Duilio loves his teacher more than his own father. He can still come as long as it's not every day. At the request of Duilio's father, Lorenzo rarely visits Duilio. He decides to get back with Cecilia. One day, Duilio meets Lorenzo after school. He says his father wanted Lorenzo to visit them. Later, Duilio's father reveals that Duilio's grandfather had been admitted to the hospital because his condition worsened, and he wanted Duilio and Lorenzo to visit him together. The following Sunday, Duilio and Lorenzo go to the hospital together. Duilio's grandfather is lying weak on the bed. He tells Duilio to be nice to his family. He also tells Lorenzo that Duilio loves him very much, and he hopes Lorenzo never leaves him. Later, they stop for lunch together. A waitress asks about their relationship. Lorenzo says they are brothers, and Duilio is happy to hear that. Duilio tells him about his older sister Adalgisa, who will be home for a while. He had told her many things about Lorenzo, and Adalgisa was eager to meet him. A few days later, Adalgisa returns home. Duilio invites Lorenzo to have dinner with his family. Later, Duilio, Lorenzo, and Adalgisa spend time together. Lorenzo and Adalgisa become close, and Duilio gets jealous. The next day, Adalgisa wants Lorenzo to accompany her to the town, because the rest of her family are in the fields. On the way, they stop for a moment to make out, but Lorenzo is holding back. Lorenzo continues his relationship with Cecilia. He wants their relationship to work without Bruno. But Cecilia explains she loves them both, and Lorenzo decides to end their relationship. One day, Lorenzo gets a postcard from Duilio, informing him that his grandfather had died. Lorenzo comes to Duilio's house, and Duilio is happy to see him. Duilio hopes Lorenzo will return to teaching next year, and tells him that he can stay the night, and sleeps in his room. His stepmother knows Lorenzo is a good guy, there's no way he'd do anything bad to him. That night, Duilio is asleep, while Lorenzo can't sleep and thinking about something. The next day, Lorenzo says goodbye to the Duilio family. He decides to return to his hometown, and he probably won't come back there. Duilio's father says Lorenzo is welcome anytime. Duilio's stepmother finally realizes Lorenzo has genuine feelings for Duilio, and she asks for forgiveness. Meanwhile, Duilio knows Lorenzo won't be back. It's not that he can't, but because he doesn't want to. Before Duilio can say goodbye, Lorenzo quickly gets into the taxi. Duilio doesn't understand the reason Lorenzo left him. Lorenzo is sad, and he sees Duilio one last time. He has lost the love of a boy who tells him everything and believes him completely. The Flavor of Corn is a bittersweet story about friendship and first love. It tells about Duilio, a farm boy, who has romantic feelings toward his teacher Lorenzo. At first, their relationship started as good friends. Lorenzo often visited Duilio's house, met his family, and Duilio wished Lorenzo to be his older brother. But over time, Duilio's love grew beyond that. The boy kissed his teacher on the lips in a farm barn. Duilio's stepmother began to distrust Lorenzo. Duilio's father also objected that his son loved his teacher more than his own father. This put Lorenzo in an awkward situation, not only professionally but also in the midst of the generous Duilio family. To get out of this predicament, Lorenzo decided to leave the village and Duilio forever. Duilio's stepmother finally realized that Lorenzo's feelings for Duilio were genuine and asked for forgiveness. Duilio knew that his teacher would never return, not because he couldn't, but because he rejected the idea of a homosexual love affair with him. This classic film has a slow-paced plot, but it has beautiful acting and great story, pure and simple but also complicated. The film beautifully presents the drama and conflict, which makes the film even more interesting. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notification.